podcast, Short Non-Ballistic Weapons Disarming, by means of military elite close combat tradecraft tactics and skills for the battlefield. This podcast will focus on short, sharp-edged and bludgeon-type weapons disarming under incoming entry assault, but not on ambush at weapon point or weapon shaft, which will be covered in a future podcast edition. Short non-ballistic weapons include knives, daggers, short clubs, screwdrivers, ice picks, trench warfare tools, slaps, blackjacks, hammers, bottles, koshes, and any improvised short-length tool or object, whether it be sharp-edged or bludgeon-type. Some important considerations of facing a sharp-edged or bludgeon-type short weapon include daggers and knives are always loaded. The best tactic is to put as much distance between yourself and the weapon as possible. Never turn your back on the blade until you are far enough away from it to safely escape. If you have any doubts in your mind as to if your techniques may not be effective, you need to upskill. This is not about arts or sports. This is about combat, and safety is paramount. Never underestimate a sharp-edged weapon, as the outcome could be fatal. Have the brains and use your smarts by being honest with yourself, as only a fool would put one's life at risk under a sharp-edged or bludgeon-type assault. Be honest with yourself, not only as to your technique capabilities, but also in regard to if you have the mental toughness to take a disarming action against a formidable foe. And remember, it doesn't take a highly skilled coward with an edged weapon, much effort or capability to cause you lethal harm. The acronym WAR, from the Todd Systems Brain to Boot manual and training package for military self-defense and military close combat mental toughness enhancement, stands for willing, able, ready, and is essential in best of battle proven skills, expertise training, and is many more times essential and important up against an armed enemy with bad intentions, remembering it's all too late under an armed assault to realise you do not have the intestinal fortitude, inner resolve or mental toughness to overcome your fears of the live blade or short bludgeon type weapon and take affirmative, disarming, disabling and disposing threat neutralisation actions. I reiterate, you need to get as far away from an armed aggressor as soon as you can, as discreetly as possible, and you can never be too far away from an armed assaulter, miles, many backyards, many streets away. Your short weapon under threat and assault tactics and skills require total intestinal fortitude, empowered by an uncompromising mentality, tough mindset, and safest proven practices. The 3 Ds, as in disarm, disable, dispose, are the requirement in MIL short weapon counter-engagement actions to disarm, disable, and dispose of a formidable armed threat against you. You should never adopt a defensive mentality. You do not defend against a hard or sharp weapon being used against you. Skills-wise, you need to employ disarming and counter-engagement 3 Ds, not merely defend by flesh, tendon and artery up against blade or bludgeon. The MIL short weapon disarming the Todd Group instructs for sharp or bludgeon short weapons comprises of the same fundamentals because it is same system, tactics and skill sets. Being fundamentally the same and principle-based provides one set of principles for all short weapon attacks disarming. And under a high-risk, high-threat situation, this reduces the decision-making and as such increases confidence in capability. I have had the privilege and benefits of being trained by several military expert instructors, including military elite close combat Master Chief instructors and senior instructors from World War II and later generations. While they all advocated tactics to avoid or prevent unarmed combatant against armed enemy threat situations, the reality is, if compromised, employing best of battle proven primary means of neutralising short-edged or bludgeon-type weapon enemy armed threat neutralisation is a must. There were basically 2 ways of achieving this when completely unarmed. Offensively, enemy disarming engagement, and counter-offensively, enemy disarming engagement. The counter-offensive short-edged and bludgeon-type weapon enemy counter-engagement primary means of threat neutralisation was by evasive counter-actions and the 3 Ds, disarm, disable, dispose. Colonel Rex Applegate trained World War II covert operators and if they were compromised, often the best means of threat neutralization objective achievement was by initiating the actions on, attacking your attacker before they could attack you. Applegate advocated for military kill or die actions on when facing an enemy armed with a dagger or short weapon, shooting the enemy. If without a primary or backup weapon, use any longer improvised weapon than the enemy's dagger at your disposal to attack the enemy's weapon-holding hand or life support systems. If completely without a primary or backup weapon or any non-ballistic or improvised weapon, he instructed throwing something hard like your battle helmet at his head and stamp kicking the enemy's knee joint of the leg on the opposite side to the weapon-holding hand for starters. Now to the Todd CQC principles and practices of Mil Elite dagger or short trench warfare type weapon disarming. A compact, neutral stance is very important, with a definite and deliberate ground affinity, ready boot status for expedient actions. Controlling range, using barriers or angles, focus on the weapon tip. CQC, controlled respiration, situational awareness, including hazards identification. Have an end plan of enemy threat neutralization and or escape and evasion. Hard protect your life support systems, human sensors, arteries, tendons, and ligaments. Tactical armed assaulter, evasive timing is essential to make the enemy miss and put you in a primary range and position to neutralize the enemy. Your decision making as to evasive direction must be decided by the incoming weapon's line of travel and the blur of the forwardmost tip or point of the incoming weapon. This is essential in a high-speed incoming actions on. Primary kill zone clearing and the 3Ds are CQC principle tradecraft practices based, and as such, a single principle is applied based on the combatants' assess, decide, and execute decision-making in regards to evading away from the weapon, travel, direction, and timing, immediate post-clearing the kill zone, threat neutralization decision-making, and set up, including making any adjustment required for 3D's threat neutralization initiation. The Todd systems have specific skills for roles, duties, threat and situational specifics, and to combat a weapon holding enemy means to attack your assaulter before they can attack you as part of disarming, disabling, and disposing of the threat. Counter-engagement or counterattack, as it's also known, is to use evasion or stationary evasion to clear the kill zone, backed up by disarming, disabling, and disposing of the threat, either by attacking your attacker or attacking their weapon-holding hand to cause the weapon to be dropped and following up with disarm, disable, dispose, or attacking the weapon-holding forearm, and if safe to do so, seizing and securing the weapon-holding hand or weapon-holding hands and wrist to prevent the weapon being used against you, and employing the 3Ds. Now to what not to do in a short-weaponed armed assault. Do not leave any extremity in the kill zone, as in a trailing leg or outstretched arm. Always do your utmost to avoid sharp weapon penetration or hard weapon contact. Never base life-saving skills on predetermined guesswork. Always assess, decide, and execute your best chances, options of safe and effective threat neutralization. Train to combat or counter short weapons threats under unpredictable, unorthodox actions on with all the factors of highly committed, deadly assaults ever present. Always assess, decide, execute, making real-time, fast-mapping assessments, adjustments to have maximum chance of safe disarming. Maintain a ready boot status. Use your point-and-place visual scanning assessment of the threat and environment, all 180 degrees of it, so as to be able to identify a weapon as far out and as early as possible. Never underestimate or take a weapon for granted. Always remember, the most dangerous weapon is the one you don't see, and your first indicator is the red-hot burning sensation of being stabbed, or blunt force trauma, contact impact, or spark-out sensation of being bludgeoned. When unarmed against a weapon, always avoid setting a stance that advantages the lead foot and disadvantages the rear foot. Maintain a neutral footing, ready boot status to enable kill zone clearing evenly effectively on either side. Always be aware and vigilant that a short, bludgeon-type weapon may be spiked or have sharp edges. When seizing and securing a weapon holding hand or hands, it is a must to be completely competent and capable in the seizure and securing of the weapon holding hand and wrist, preventing the weapon being able to be manipulated so as it can cut or stab the hand or wrist of your weapon holding hand or hands. The CQC compound clasp grip seizure of the weapon holding hand and wrist or weapon holding hands and wrists fits with stamp kick threat neutralization by knee joint ligaments destructive incapacitation. This outlines the importance of same system skills commonality and cohesion, maximizing safety and objective achievement. You do not want to be holding on with a single hand grip of a weapon holding hand. Never stay square on in the kill zone and attempt to single or cross-arm block a live blade or unknown hard short weapon, as the fact of the matter is a determined enemy will use multiple thrusts, slashes or clubbing actions, and the likelihood of being able to effectively neutralize such a threat staying square on and static in the kill zone is as low as it gets, and once your hands and arms capabilities have been destroyed, you are vulnerable to grievous bodily harm. Likewise, never stay square on statically in the kill zone and attempt to outreach and seize and secure a weapon holding hand or hands. Never adopt skills that are specific to only one type of short weapon threat in regard to the travel and direction of the incoming thrust, slash, or hammer action. A good example of this is moving outside the line of a straight thrusting dagger and using the same skill against a round slash, which would take you towards the slashing dagger, not away from its travel. Always remember, demonstrations and still photographs and illustrations in books and manuals do not provide the diverse realities of aggressive armed assaulter actions on, including the unpredictability of sudden aggressive shock actions. They may well depict an unarmed victim blocking an assaulter's dagger or bludgeon type weapon forearm with no reference to the realities of the weapon being rapidly extended and retracted or following the blocking arm down, wounding and possibly penetrating major life support vitals and being fatal. Aggressive foes do not leave their weapon holding hand stationary in the airspace and against a blocking arm or arms. Our Mill Elite dagger and short non-ballistic weapon disarming includes kill zone clearing by primary practice methods as well as a secondary and emergency options. There are also situational specific means and methods, all based on the same CQC tradecraft practices and principles for different environments, roles and duties, such as room layouts and for confined or restricted spaces like for aircraft and ships or trench warfare. For CQC, weapons disarming post-evasion, the 3 Ds apply, and these are the primary unarmed disarming options: immediate armed assaulter, threat neutralization, counter-engagement by CQC means, or immediate weapon arm targeting with full force to cause weapon release followed by CQC means threat neutralization. Post-weapon holding arm targeting, if the enemy maintains their grip of the weapon, but the weapon holding hand and wrist can be safely seized and secured, as in compound weapon hand clasp seizure and securing, the weapon can be manipulated away, loading up the closest leg for effective knee joint or kneecap ligaments, stamp kicking, destruction. It is always important for the combatant to understand that any formidable enemy is going to do everything they can to regain control of their weapon and use it against the combatant. Single hand grips do not provide effective retention against a formidable foe bent on regaining control of his weapon and using it to cause grievous bodily harm. Our CQC dagger and short weapon disarming includes counter 3Ds, actions against thrusts, slashes, including multiple slashes, and throw-in weapon threats. For those that have undergone our Specialist Phase 3 armed enemy disarming skills, combating the armed enemy, if it is the safest and best option to neutralize the armed enemy and or escape and evade, can be a primary means of immediate threat neutralization. Initiating immediate combat actions on against your short weapon armed assaulter, as in attacking your attacker before they can initiate actions on against you, employing the 3Ds threat neutralization. Initiating and employing such combat actions on requires high-level skill and uncompromising mental toughness, as well as understanding all the required deceptive, distractive, and incapacitation type setups to increase safety and chances of effective threat neutralization. The combatant must also be highly skilled, capable, and proficient in all the short, edged or bludgeon type weapon, combat disarming skills, contingency options to deal with real-time changes in threat actions on. For mil elite dagger and trench warfare weapons threats where the combatant is wounded or injured, or for POW situations where the combatant is restricted or restrained. In such high-level threat situations, tactics instructed include, in a life or death, no other option situation, reducing the life or limb destruction degree and level of being wounded. The maintaining of capabilities to effectively neutralize the enemy is most important in such dire situations. Plain and simple reality is, if you are going to get wounded, then you need to reduce the risk as much as possible and maintain maximum capabilities to enable enemy threat neutralization. This may come down to minimizing penetration or blunt force trauma, or exposing flesh and muscle over arteries, tendons, or life support systems. Inoculation against the psychological effects of non-ballistic weapons, wounding and injuries outcomes, and the developing of fear control through controlled exposure and training is essential. For military elite purposes, both in threat neutralization and in reducing the effects of wounding, the combatant must be well versed in the medical implications of short, edged and bludgeon type weapons in combat actions on. Dulled blades and shock knives are some such tools used in 3D's training. In days gone by, the hot poker taken out of the campfire was a means of practicing hot weapon disarming. The combatant mindset is the most important combatant attribute. Our candidates under Phase 1 basic testing must face real weapons for proving their 3D's capabilities required for passing Phase 1 testing and promotion to Phase 2 advanced training. The edged weapon disarming under Phase 1 testing must be realistic, and the candidate must assess, decide, and execute the best and safest means of disarming, with no prior knowledge of the specific type of action being taken against them. This is very important, as if it was predetermined choreography, it would not prepare them for the realities of a real-life actions on against a formidable foe. This MSD, Military Self-Defense podcast, is for military self-defense and military close quarters combat on the battlefield or in urban operators actions on. Obviously, the tactics and skills may be overkill for civilian self-defense, and it never ceases to surprise me how many people at trade shows and when I'm undertaking public speaking on military self-defense and military CQC have no real idea of the realities of the employment of military tradecraft skills. I have been asked many times what gives a soldier better chances of disarming a knife than anyone else, and the answer is simple. The combatant has primary, backup, and edged weapons, and on the battlefield, it's kill or die. So the reality is, armed options provide the best chances of effective disarming and threat neutralization, and that is the military kill or die primary means of this type of threat neutralization. These podcasts and CQC times and the training we provide are very important for operators, combatants looking for battlefield proven, unarmed combat and military self-defense skills. They also provide high-level capabilities for civilians in civilian self-defense situations by employing them with threat neutralization capabilities of incapacitation commensurate with the threat level and in relation to the laws of self-defense. You will have noticed that the same principles and terminology have been used multiple times in this podcast. This is because I wanted to reiterate these important short, edged or bludgeon type weapon threat neutralization skills, and also because the different roles, duties, usages, and employments of the skills are made up of the same or similar basic practices and tradecraft principles, and as such, the terms and terminology and instructions are same or similar.